G'day everyone, welcome back to a very overdue reptile room tour video. So that's right guys, in this video we're going to be doing a reptile room tour. We will kind of venture out into the other rooms as well and touch on all the other animals and stuff that I've got going on here, but we will start in this kind of main reptile room that we've got going on. I will quickly touch on that if you guys are looking for backgrounds like what I use in these, I do have my own business called From Bush to Box. We are shipping worldwide. It is pretty much all custom work these days, but if you want to get in contact, make sure to go and check out us on Instagram or just look for www.frombushtobox.com and contact me through the email link and stuff there, and we can start working on a project if you want to go down this route. I will quickly also say a massive thank you to all my patrons as well. Your support really does keep me going on this sort of adventure. You know, and all the subscribers and everyone that likes the videos, comments on the videos and such as well, all of that really helps encourage me to keep making these videos for you guys and put a little bit of content out there. So without any further ado, let's get into a reptile room tour video. I'm going to turn this camera around so you don't have to look at my mug, and we'll kind of go through a few updates and stuff along the way of what's been happening with some animals and things, and you know, little future ideas and stuff like that I got tinkered around in my head. So first things first, I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the room as such. I do have a lot of reptile paraphernalia through here as well. I've got photos from photographers such as Michael Payne, Tom from Tom's Wildlife. I've got posters all over the shop that have been gifted to me, such as this good gecko and lizard poster from Tyson from Geckos and Lizards of NZ. I've got all sorts of posters, all sorts of little photography prints and things. Some things from guys like Ross McGibbon, for example, like that Kimbo. Yeah, all sorts of stuff going on in this room, to be honest. Yeah, it's definitely a lizard nerd room. I'll leave it at that. But as far as animals go, got an animal over here on the desk. We'll see if he's out and about. Looks like he is just kind of out and about too. This is little Oakley. This is my she-oak skink. He is a beautiful little lizard. I love this lizard dearly. However, I think I've decided to move him on to a keeper that's interested in him. So if that all goes ahead to plan, that'll be great. Just because, yeah, I need a little bit more space, and as much as I love this lizard, I want to pass him on to a friend who I think might just love him that little bit more than what I do. So, you know, no fault of his own whatsoever. If he ends up staying here, I'm not going to be disappointed whatsoever. I absolutely love this little guy, but he's just in a little Exoterra. This is a 45 by 45 by 30 tall Exoterra. Nothing super fancy about this this setup. It's pretty basic. We've got a little LED light as well as a UV bar in there. I don't actually heat this enclosure just because this room does get super hot. So I figure like any sort of ambient temperature fluctuations that he needs, he's definitely going to be able to get that via all the other heating elements and things with all the other lizards in this room. However, if I did have him in a bigger vivarium in a different area, I definitely would throw some heat on top of him, just like any sort of day active basking lizard. But yeah, he's been living like this for years, so I'm not overly concerned as of the moment. So that's the little guy that's over here on my desk. Down below, got a bit of an empty enclosure at the moment. I just kind of have this as a bit of a temporary setup. You know, should I get some baby lizards or something like that come in, or hatch a few lizards out, this is going to be a new little temporary setup for them, rather than kind of like tub raising lizards like I have been in the past. So it's kind of good to have a spare tank on hand, and I do have multiple spare tanks down in the garage as well, so should I need extra tanks I can rip them out of the garage. But yeah, this is just what I've got on hand at present, so this is just something, if something decides to pop up, then yeah, we've got that going on. Over here we have a Gillian tank. You will come to learn, if you haven't met me before or haven't seen my videos, I'm absolutely obsessed with Gillian, the Pygmy mulga monitors, Gillian's monitors. Yeah, these little denizens of the desert absolutely intrigue me. They are, in my honest opinion, one of the most perfect goannas you can own, just because They're obviously small, they're obviously tiny, and they pack a punch as far as goanna attitude goes. You know, these guys are very interactive. They do everything big goannas do, but they're just in a way smaller package. So these guys are full-grown adults. These are a breeding trio. There is 1 male and 2 females in this tank. Okay, so this tank is 90 centimeters long, 60 centimeters deep front to back, and 120 centimeters tall. I try to provide a lot more vertical space than I do horizontal space. You know, they could definitely benefit from more horizontal space, but these guys are more arboreal versus terrestrial. So these guys have things like these beautiful hollow logs through here that they hide in. They've also got this fake termite mound that they love climbing and basking on, and this also acts as a facade to a nest box, which is actually hiding behind the termite mound there. So these enclosures, as per all the enclosures in this room, pretty much bar Oakley's, run on a Grid Connect automated home system. So essentially all the lights come on during the day, during various hours of the day, depending on sunrise and sunset in my suburb. It's also controlled to flick on a Mist King system should it overheat in this room, or should it get too hot, it can also flick all the lights off. So yeah, there's all sorts of stuff going on in these tanks as far as the home automation goes. It is actually something that I'd just forgotten about as far as filming goes. I have just flicked the lights off to this wall here, just so we can try to not get so many reflections. So I apologise for any of the footage that might have a little bit of reflections. It is kind of hard to film in this room without getting any sorts of reflections in there. But yeah, these little lizards are fantastic, and I am absolutely obsessed with them. It is one of those things that, you know, if I had to keep one lizard in the world or anything like that, then these guys would be it. I don't know, they're just what floats my boat. It's just an amazing little species that can go through some of the harshest conditions of the interior of Australia, and yeah, it's definitely my plan to go and see a few more localities of these guys in the wild. So above that trio that are down the bottom there, I do have another trio of gilleni in this tank up here. We've got 2 females and a male. My male in this tank is referred to as Randy or Randall. He's a big stonking gilleni male, and I'm very happy to announce that I have actually managed to get some more eggs out of this trio already this season. So I do have 4 eggs cooking away in the incubator from these guys, and if I do happen to hatch those babies out, I think I might hoard them this year. Last year I kind of sold a few on, and in particular I don't have any offspring from Randy, so just to kind of further some genetic pooling and stuff like that I've got going on here, I will probably hold at least a couple of his babies back, if not more, this season. We'll just kind of see as the year progresses. They're not actually hanging out at the moment. I can see one of the females' heads just hanging out over here. That being said, I'm not sure where the others are. They are probably in this hollow log. This hollow log does run for a fair whack of the enclosure, pretty much top to bottom, and they love using every little inch of that log. Again, same sort of deal. They have a termite mound in there, which is a hide essentially, so it acts as a hide as well as a facade to a nest box like this. And it actually looks like somebody's been digging in there, so I will probably check that out in another day or two to see if there's a female that's getting ready to potentially lay another clutch of eggs out of there. We'll see how we go. So yeah, again, 90 by 60 centimeters by 120 centimeters tall. And then these 2 bigger enclosures over here, these are 120 by 120 by 60 centimeters tall. So we will start down the bottom here with my Blackheaded monitor pair. So these guys are awesome lizards. They are a very underrated species in the hobby, in my opinion. I think there are a lot of lizards out there that just kind of might not get enough justice for the kind of species that they are and their own sort of traits and things like that. You know, these guys can be shy. They can be a little bit standoffish, but I personally love these lizards for what they are. You can see the male's kind of draping out over that termite mound there, and it looks like he's managed to get covered in some urate, probably from the female, or it's probably from going up and down through this hollow log a lot. You know, if they've been going to the bathroom in there, then no doubt he's coming into contact with a bit of urate through there. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. I try to give him a bit of a shower here or there, or, you know, he just sheds it off as he sheds. But yeah, these lizards are fantastic tree dwelling monitors. I'm absolutely obsessed with tree dwelling monitors. That's why you can see there's lots of nice hollow logs and big branches and things for them to climb through here. This branch in particular, this was one that I kind of recently added in maybe a couple of months ago, and it was so awesome to see. I think it was the male, it could have been the female, checking it out, like actually catching them, checking it out and hanging off it like a tristis would in the wild. It was really, really cool. Something I have noticed this morning is, after spending yesterday pretty much cleaning this reptile room up for this video, is I forgot that on Sundays my Miss King decides to go off and provide a bit of humidity to these guys. So yeah, there's a few drops of moisture and stuff getting around inside of these tanks, which I wasn't planning for, and it has dirtied up a bit of the glass, unfortunately. But right now on camera it's looking pretty crystal clear. But that's another thing that I've got going on in here, is a couple of times a week these guys actually get a bit of humidity, everyone in the room. So they've got a Miss King that comes on just for a minute twice a week, and that just provides a little bit of humidity to these enclosures. There's one thing that I have noticed recently, which I will touch on in a future video, and some keen-eyed viewers have probably noticed that I've swapped out my lighting inside of all of these enclosures. I'm now using incandescent bulbs as per, what old school ways essentially. I've gotten rid of all the deep heat projectors for a reason that I'll probably touch on in a future video. I just found out that, they just seem to be drying out my animals a little bit, and I didn't particularly like the way that was kind of going on. I wasn't aware that those globes had the capability of doing that. But yeah, I'm kind of just testing a few things out to see if my theories are correct. And as I said, I'll touch on that in a future video. So, above the black-headed monitors down here, we have my Kimberly rock monitor, Mrs. Wiggles. Now, I'm not going to lie, she is stressing me out a lot at the moment. And the reason for that is she doesn't have a male in with her. But every year she likes to drop at least one clutch of eggs. This year she dropped a clutch of eggs, and she's just been very timid to get on the food again. So I'm just kind of, erring on the side of caution and trying to offer her little bits of different foods just to try to get some weight back onto her. She has lost a significant amount of weight, so I am trying to really just give her some TLC and just try to get her back on track. This morning she did actually take some kangaroo mince for me, which, whilst it's not a food that I very often offer lizards, it is an occasional food that I will offer if I am trying to put weight back on animals. So for example, like the Gillian female that did drop a clutch of eggs for me, she's getting some treats to try to whack some of that weight back on, even if it is just to kind of bulk her up to get her back on track. Obviously, primarily I'm trying to feed these guys lots of bugs, but for me just to get a little bit of weight on this girl and just try to kick her back into gear and try to let her recover, I am trying to do that. I am trying to do things such as actually taking her outside and putting her inside some of my temporary mesh enclosures to make sure she's getting natural UV. Obviously these guys do have UVB inside of these enclosures, but you just can't replicate real UVB. So for me, it's a no-brainer just to be able to kind of have a temporary enclosure where I can take her outside and be able to do that. You will notice probably that the rock stacks have changed around a little bit. I've actually just taken a few rocks out, and if you did notice they were probably down in that spare enclosure down the bottom there just for storage space. I just wanted to kind of make it a little bit more simple in here, so any bugs running around and things like that, she has better access to be able to grab and just munch on those and just be able to get some weight back onto her. I wanted less chance of bugs hiding, so yeah, there was quite a complicated stack of rocks and things over here which she utilised, but I've just kind of made it simpler just to be able to see if I can get some extra feed into this beautiful girl, because the last thing I want is anything horrible to happen to this lizard, because I absolutely adore this lizard. Well, that's a pretty good look at the little monitor corner, or I refer to this as the monitor corner here. So yeah, obviously you guys can probably tell that I'm Adatria obsessed. These little lizards just absolutely fascinate me, and I love being able to keep them in these kind of, I'll call them simple naturalistic enclosures. I kind of find these pretty aesthetically pleasing to myself, and I'm sure the animals do get a bit of a kick out of them. You will kind of notice a bit of a theme where I do try to keep the animals in this room in particular in some pretty, what I'd say, simple enclosures. They're not overly complicated. They tend to look a little bit more like that just because the backgrounds give them a bit more depth. If you were to take the backgrounds out of this, it's just a few upright logs, a few termite mounds, a water bowl, sand, pretty typical story of how most people would keep these animals. I just kind of think that maybe, an animal in a box staring at a black back wall or a glass wall or a white wall of melamine or something like that, it might just not do much for them. So at least by having a little bit of something to look at, it might just stimulate them a little bit more, or at least just kind of break up the sterile look of an enclosure. So yeah, pretty simple enclosures. I mean, obviously there's a bit of automation that goes into these I can chuck up a link here on a bit of home automation that I do use inside of these enclosures as well. If not, I'll put it down in the description for you to check out. But yeah, that's basically the monitor corner.
Big huffy boy.
He's a gorgeous lizard, this guy. Definitely a gorgeous lizard. We'll flick these lights off and we'll scoot around to this wall and flick these lights on so you can have a look at the lizards in here. Oh, well, the power of Grid Connect, we've flicked those off. Now hopefully we'll have less reflections when we go and have a look at all the animals over on this wall here. I suppose I'll start on this top row up here. Hopefully I'll be able to get some B-roll of these lizards because they don't actually seem to be out at the moment, apart from maybe some of the small goannas. But over in this enclosure here, I have a hopeful female depressor, a Gurnia depressor or Pygmy spiny tail skink. Absolutely awesome lizards. And yeah, it's basically the skink version of Gillian. I think that's why I'm so intrigued by these lizards. So these guys, I've got a male over in here. I'm pretty certain we've got a male over in here as well. So hopefully a future pair. They're both in exoterras. So these setups are 45 centimeters by 45 centimeters by 60 centimeters tall. Again, setup is kind of like a boreal setups. Basically just got a small halogen heat light there, a little 25 watt heat light. And we've got UVB and LEDs up the top. Again, Miss King systems in here, so you can kind of notice, although it might have dried up a little bit now. Oh no, we've got a few drops still over on this enclosure here. Yeah, they do get a little spray of water a couple of times a week as per the rest of the room. So pretty simple setups, but it allows me to clean them very easily when I do my cleaning. I tend to use a fish net, like an actual aquarium fish net, to sift my sand, just because it gets way more fine particles and things out of the sand that the lizards like to kick around and break up, or any cockroach poo or anything like that, kind of just gets sifted straight out of there. So yeah, great little lizards. These guys are very interactive and very food driven. So it is awesome to be able to tongue feed these guys. They absolutely love their bugs, things like crickets, mealworms, cockroaches, basically anything you put in their tanks are just fair game. They'll also eat other sorts of food, such as a little bit of vegetable matter. They don't seem overly keen on veggies, but being a Gurnia, I do try to offer it. They also seem to really love like a little bit of egg occasionally. Again, I try to avoid things like meat and egg as much as possible unless I'm trying to put weight on animals. But for me, I'm just trying to raise these guys up to a half decent size, and hopefully I'll put them into a tank one day where they can, hopefully kind of establish a little bit of a territory together. And yeah, hopefully we can reproduce some Gurnia depressor, because that'd be just really dang cool. Over in this cage here, so again, same dimensions, 45 by 45 by 60 centimeters. I actually decided to keep back a couple of young tristis or blackheaded monitors. You can see a little fella hanging up the top there. Absolutely love these lizards. They are a species that I've always just sold the babies on. I've never actually raised any up myself. And that was one thing that I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to do that this year. I produced a few of them. I was just going to hold on to a couple and basically just see how they go. I just wanted to see if I could raise a few up and just enjoy them for the time being. If I need to move them on down the line, I can always do that. But for me, I just thought, I just wanted to watch a couple grow for a little while, and these guys are doing fantastic. Again, absolutely love their bugs. Anything that goes into that enclosure is basically free game. They're like little ninjas just jumping around the joint. But yeah, they love this enclosure. They've got a little halogen heat light up the top there. Nice, beautiful hollow log, as well as this kind of piece of wood down here. Like to kind of wedge under. Pretty simple setup again. Bit of grass and stuff in there, some twigs and stuff that they can jump around in. I absolutely love these lizards. We'll kind of zigzag across these enclosures a little bit too, I think. So we'll go over here to Billy the Frilly. So this is my big frill neck here. He is a beautiful lizard, and as you can see, glass is a bit stiff. He actually copped a little bit of a burnt frill this year, and this was a big mistake of my own doing, and I'm the kind of person that I'm happy to admit my faults where I'm wrong and where I've screwed up. And what had happened is essentially above this log here, looks a little bit deceptive, but this light's actually kind of like further back away from this log now, but originally it was kind of directly above this log. And I believe during winter when he was just trying to really get hot, he just managed to clip his frill on that deep heat projector when I had it in there a couple of times, and that's what's kind of led to this little bit of a burn. He is healing up really nicely though. I'm not overly worried for his health at all. I did put some topical ointments and things like that on there just to try to help it out, just so he didn't get too sore and unhappy from it. But yeah, it is one of those things where I did make a mistake. I'm happy to own my mistake, and hopefully somebody learns something from my mistake and can better their own animal keeping from that. Essentially, this enclosure is a little smaller than what I'd like for him. I'm not going to lie. That being said though, I think it is a well set up enclosure for the space that I've been given. It is a very basic enclosure again, obviously relying on the background just to kind of break up a little bit of the mundane activity that's going inside of this enclosure. I have altered these natural logs myself. So there was a video that I popped out, it'll be over a year ago now, where essentially I took some logs from the bush, and these logs I actually coated multiple times in PVA glue, which is a non-toxic glue, just to kind of really hold the bark and the texture actually on the logs themselves. And then over the top of that, I actually painted them to match the logs that are in the background there. As you can tell, they match in pretty dang well. I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty happy with how they came out. You know, there's a little bit of wear and tear that's happened over these logs over time. You can obviously see where, you know, Billy really likes sitting on this log here. You can see that he's kind of worn away a bit of that black texture and things that are on there. But you know what, that would happen in the wild too, where a burnt tree had a few scratch marks from an animal on it, so I'm not overly concerned about that. The bark's not coming off. Long term, I could always make up some new branches and spend a bit of time doing that and, you know, swap them out from time to time. So I'm not overly concerned about that. But all in all, Billy's doing absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love this lizard. He, again, is one of those lizards that just, he's rock solid. Like, he'll just eat anything that comes into his enclosure. He is a particularly big fan of Frizzy's grasshoppers. I know that he whenever Frizzy sends me a few grasshoppers, he kind of puts a couple of giant ones in there just for this lizard, just to really give him a really good feed. Because you know what, it sucks trying to feed him like 20 cockroaches or 20 crickets or something like that, where you can have like one big grasshopper or two big grasshoppers if he's an absolute guts, and that's like almost a week's feed for this lizard. He's very happy about that. It is one thing that I will be doing in the future, and I have done in the past, is, you know, coming into the warmer months of the year, I do like giving him cicadas from time to time. So, you know, if I can get my hands on a couple of cicadas, he'll get those as a bit of a treat, because, you know, that's what he'd be smashing in the wild as well. Okay, so we'll zigzag back across here too to two of my most recent setups. These enclosures here house a few extra gilleni, or more gilleni. I can't get enough gilleni, as you can probably tell. So over in this enclosure here, we have a pair, or a believed pair, of Tanamite gilleni. They are fantastic little lizards, and I love having a locality of gilleni that's a little bit different to whatever I've got, because I don't have the locality of the main lot of gilleni that I have. So yeah, we've got two Tanamite gilleni over in there. And then over in this tank here, we've actually got what I believe is 3 male gilleni. So you can see one basking out there nice and in the open, and I can see another little head just poking out in the middle of the screen there now. So these guys are awesome lizards. And these enclosures too, you know, they're very basic. I do actually have to just spend some time out in the scrub and try to find some more half decent logs, because I do want to pack these out a little bit further. Or at the very least, you know, just some more climbing opportunities and things through here. Again, you know, these guys can get right up to the top onto that mesh. So these guys, quite often, they'll launch off those top logs and they'll go and climb around on the mesh, and just for the little Houdinis that Gil and I tend to be, absolutely baking themselves in the sunshine up there. They love getting up underneath that UV. Like all these enclosures, pretty simple enclosures. They make maintenance very easy, but they're also aesthetically pleasing, and they seem to be giving the lizards what they actually need. Something that I want to do for these guys as well is I wouldn't mind including a couple of little miniature termite mounds that I'm not going to necessarily make into like nest boxes, but just kind of like a humid hide. It is on the cards, and it is something that I want to do. I will go straight under them just now, just because one of the lizards that I want to film is out, and sometimes he might not be. But straight under these guys we have Acorn, my South Australian Shingleback. This is the old hopping mouse enclosure. This is his home. This is an enclosure that I will be giving an upgrade to shortly. And what I mean by an upgrade is I want to just kind of deck it out with a few more twigs and things and such. But I've also got a background that I want to put on there that's going to be a little bit more suited for this particular lizard. Just something that I took from an actual Shingleback habitat. You know, as much as I love the Spinifex look in here, I obviously did that for the Spinifex hopping mice that I had. And now I've got this beautiful little shingleback here that I want to kind of just do something that's a little bit more unique to him. What I may try to do, I'm not sure yet, but I might try to actually lay that background just straight over the background that I've got here, and then potentially down the line I could try to peel it off. I'm not 100% sure just yet. So yeah, this enclosure here, this is it's a smidge under 1.5 meters long enclosure, or 5 foot enclosure, by 60 centimeters deep, and by, I think it's about 500 mil tall, or 50 centimeters tall. But this is plenty big enough for this little shingleback. He's a beautiful little lizard. I absolutely love shinglebacks, and I'm so glad to have finally gotten one in my life. This is a little animal that I plan to be a pet for years and years to come. It's, I think it's really important to have certain pets for people growing up, and something that I'm really enjoying of late is having my son Finney. He absolutely loves coming into this reptile room and playing with a few of the lizards and watching the lizards, and yeah, his eyes on lizards and snakes and things like that, man, he's getting good at being able to spot them. He's probably going to show me up in a few years' time as a herper, I reckon, so not that would be hard. I've got pretty famously crap eyes as far as seeing lizards and things go in the wild, but I love having this little lizard here, and my son gets quite a kick out of seeing him in this room. So yeah, I want to do a few other upgrades to this enclosure just to try to, just provide a few more foraging opportunities for him. I kind of simplified it in a sense. I did have kind of like a long hollow log, which you'll see in a second, that went across the whole enclosure, but I think by kind of doing a couple more basic hides like this, and maybe just kind of like a few more twigs and things that can kind of come up a bit higher, just kind of opens up the land space for him to be able to walk around on. I might change up the substrate a little bit too, so rather than being just straight up sand, I might put a bit of like granite or something like that through it, just to kind of, just kind of rough it up a little bit for him. That being said, I'll just kind of see how I go with it. It's still a very well functioning enclosure. There's nothing wrong with it. He's got heat, he's got UV, he's got LEDs, he's got everything he needs. But that being said, yeah, I just want to make a few tweaks to it. So over next to him, we have probably the king of the reptile room. This is Sonic. This is my 10-year-old bearded dragon, and he is in a 120 by 120 by 60 centimeter enclosure, which tends to be a lot more than what most people will give these guys in an enclosure. But this is an enclosure that I think is, again, pretty basic, but it suits what the animal actually wants and what they do in the wild. If you think about a wild bearded dragon, they're quite often found up on a big fence post or a big log, just kind of basking away their day, surveying their territory, making sure they can see what's going on. And that's basically what I'm trying to replicate inside of this enclosure, is allowing him to have as much floor space down the bottom so he can roam as he wants, while still allowing him a nice big vantage point up here where he can perch. Well, one of the reasons I took that giant log out of Acorn's enclosure, or his habitat, because I wanted to kind of just be able to create a slightly larger area where Sonic could get closer to the UVB bulb. That was one of my concerns with this enclosure, so that's something that I have now swapped out, and he does utilize that, which is good to see. But it opens up the floor space for Acorn, and it gives him a space where he can get close to the UVB. You can see a little cyst on his lip there. I'm sure there's a few keen-eyed viewers that can see that little bulge there. He is an old dragon. We are keeping an eye on it. It has been vet checked. Basically, we're just keeping an eye on it, and if we do need to operate, we need to operate. But for now, it's not really growing, so we're not overly worried or concerned about that. We discovered that, I think it was last year. Yeah, I think it was last year that Sonic woke up from brumation, and he basically had a little bit of plaque build up on his teeth that needed a bit of a clean, so he had to go under, and he had a series of x-rays and things like that. And yeah, for a 10-year-old lizard who's only had to been to the vet once, he's doing pretty good. You can see he is a bit of a lean, mean fighting machine. I don't like overfeeding bearded dragons. There is nothing worse to me than seeing an obese bearded dragon on the internet. These guys are not like that in Australia. They're not like that in the wild, or very rarely do you find a dragon that's as fat as what you can tend to see on the internet. So yeah, I do try to feed him on the leaner side. Absolutely loves things like rocket salads. He loves a bit of grated carrot. He loves his bugs, of course, like any beardie does. But yeah, he's an awesome dragon, and I'm so stoked to finally have him in a habitat that I can say that I'm actually proud of as far as a bearded dragon owner goes. So one thing I'm sure a lot of people can kind of relate to is once you kind of finish or near finish a project such as, setting out your perfect reptile room, or what you consider to be a perfect reptile room, or it might just be an enclosure or something like that, is sometimes you can feel stale for a period of time, and you want to move on to something else and you're not quite sure what to do. Well, for me, I've almost hit where I want to be in here. There's a few little things that I want to do, of course, but for me it's I don't know, my brain's just tinkering on some other things right now. And one thing that I'm really into at the moment is diversity in food for my animals. I know it's quite easy to get stuck in the trap of, even just for a python, let's say, is just feeding mice or just feeding rats or something like that. But, even for lizards, lizards in the wild in particular, they're eating a massive variety of foods, like especially our Australian animals. When you go out into the bush and you see the amount of animals that are out there, insect-wise, these animals are not just eating crickets or just woodies or, whatever it may be. So my brain's been kind of tinkering over lately, and I've been kind of looking into breeding different insects. So for the first time, I seem to be breeding crickets somewhat successfully. I'm turning them over. The crickets you can hear chirping in the background here, I think that's like generation 4 or something like that now. They've got breeding tubs in with them now to try to get some more eggs and stuff out of those guys for the next batch to come across. I know, right now I'm hatching out a stack of pinheads, so for me, I'm learning how to breed crickets. I've been breeding mealworms. I've just started breeding mealworms as well. So, a few of the goannas don't mind a little mealworm here and there, but, obviously it's not going to be a staple. It's just going to be something different one day, rather than a staple. Obviously crickets and cockroaches are going to be my staples. Frizy from Frizy's Reptiles and Frizy's Hoppers, he always hooks me up with a few grasshoppers here and there, which is fantastic for a bit of variety for these guys. I love getting those grasshoppers into them. In particular, it's just it's so handy. The grasshoppers are out during the day and crawling around the enclosures, whereas if you chuck a bunch of crickets or cockroaches in there, they tend to hide. So having a diurnal insect is always handy. My earthworm farm is currently cranking, so my Boyd's forest dragons are loving that. Pretty much any other reptile doesn't really get into them so much, but Boyd's forest dragons are smacking some earthworms down. So yeah, it's really cool to see that kind of evolve. And I don't know, it's just been fun to kind of just take my mind not off the reptiles, but how do I better them further. It's at the moment I've just been trying to introduce more UV into my animals by giving them access to it outside, trying to introduce more variety of food by learning about breeding food and things for them. It's all that kind of stuff that a lot of us don't do. I'm not saying all, but it's easy to breed cockroaches and just feed cockroaches, you know what I mean? And crickets are definitely work. I can only imagine how much work the grasshoppers are. I did do some research into that and basically went, what? That's in the too hard basket. Yeah, it's just that kind of new interest peak and how can I make my animals a bit more self-sufficient? How can I try to minimise some costs? Obviously your labour's a cost, but at the same time, it's a labour of love, right? So yeah, I don't know, bit of fun. So there's a bit of an overview of the main reptile room here, and as promised I will take you through and show you all the other animals too, because I do find that this room gets a lot of attention as far as content and social media and stuff like that goes, because obviously it's kind of like the main part, but there are quite a few other animals here that I would like to visit. At the end of the day, whilst it's a reptile room tour video, it's more of a reptile house tour video really, isn't it? Because I've got stuff everywhere. So let's take a bit of a deviation from this room now that you've seen that, and we'll go and check out some of the other critters that we've got here. So I've just taken the lid off the lizard pit. We'll have a check out of these guys in here. We've got Big Cooper, named after the man, the myth, the legend himself, who came from Cooper. It's a great looking blotchy, blotch blue tongue lizard. Absolutely stunning critter. Absolutely love this lizard. And then also down here, just getting a bit of sun, we've got a Cunningham skink. Nice big chunky one at that. But yeah, this setup's doing really, really well out here. They've got plenty of space to hide underneath all this rock stack over here. There are more rocks over there, as well as an elevated insulated hide box there full of hay. The only thing I really need to do is keep freshening up the water, give them food, and then just trim back this plant, because this plant goes nuts depending on the time of the year and can kind of take over. But I like to leave a little bit of it in there at least, just to be able to make sure that they've got some feeling of security and cover Yeah, beautiful lizards. I love these. Cunningham's didn't like the fast movements. So in these exoterras here, this one here is a 90 by 60 by 45 deep exoterra. I have a couple of young green tree pythons. As you can see here, one loves hanging on the little dripper system that I've got going on, and another one loves his favourite perch back there. I have recently added in a whole bunch more vines. They're yet to really use them though. They might cruise about them on the night time, but as far as like daytime perching and stuff goes, they go to their faithful old spots where they know that they're nice and secure, and that's their favourite spots. Enclosures are doing really well, same as this 60 by 60 by 45. Again, this one has a couple of greens in it as well. Same sort of scenario. Love hanging up high on the dripper system. These guys are now eating on hopper mice, pretty decent sized hopper mice, almost wiener mice. There's another guy back there. Try to get a little bit more of a zoom shot in on that fella, seeing as he's up. They're gorgeous little snakes. I absolutely love these pythons. They're obviously going to need bigger enclosures eventually, but for now these guys are happily living in their little jungle boxes. I don't think I've actually done a trim or anything on these tanks since I've put them in. In fact, I might even look at putting another plant or something in this corner over here just to kind of bulk this one out. But yeah, the parlour palms and things, like you can see all these new shoots just constantly coming up. The Rapis palm doesn't seem to really be loving life in this one. But yeah, all in all, these enclosures are doing really well. Again, similar scenario, I have added in a whole bunch of extra vines over into this tank here just to try to offer more perching, more climbing. They do cruise around with them on night time, but yeah, they really prefer the perches they already know. So yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. But yeah, beautiful little snakes. Hopefully I don't annoy them too much just by patting them down. Yeah, as you can see, getting some beautiful spots and things like that through them, and very much losing their baby colours unfortunately, but that's alright. I'm more than happy to have little green pythons hanging out here, because these guys are just too dang beautiful. I mean, look at that. I know there's lots of morphs out there of green tree pythons and things, but how do you beat that? This is a beautiful little green snake. So then below them we have my pair of Boyd's forest dragons. So these guys, again, are doing fantastic. I'll open up this enclosure so we don't have as many reflections. This enclosure again has just been kind of left to its own devices. You know, I just put water and leaf litter in there. I probably could put some more plants in there. This year these guys have definitely bred a few times. The female over here, she has laid a bunch of eggs, but going off the last couple of years where I've not really been getting successful eggs, I just haven't even been bothered to dig them up. I kind of figure if they go a bit manky or whatever down the bottom there, then you know the bugs will clean them up. And if some little boys decide to hatch, well, fantastic. I'll you know, I'm just not getting my hopes up anymore. You know, there's just something that's going on with this pair where they don't seem to be, or as far as my history goes, they don't seem to be laying fertile eggs, so that's okay. They're just a couple of beautiful little lizards nonetheless. Happy just to keep these guys on here in this enclosure. Again, yeah, probably could add some more plants or something in here, but these guys just love trashing them. So you can see I've got this ficus that's just been going berserk, like it's essentially just growing out the top there and all sorts. I just, yeah, haven't really been bothered to trim it back. The Rapis palm actually has been doing pretty good in this enclosure. You can see a bunch of new shoots coming out there. What it's actually done too is it's shot a runner out. So a little while ago, this little Rapis palm decided to crop up out of the ground. So that was really cool to see that happen. So yeah, eventually this whole tank might just be full of those palms, which, you know, I'm not going to complain about. If they're happy doing the little runners thing and shooting around the joint and springing up, I'm more than happy for these guys to have that in these enclosures. Funny little lizards. These guys are so interactive, and my son Finney absolutely loves these guys. He sits very close to these guys when he has his meals and things in his high chair, so yeah, he gets a great kick out of just you know, eating some food and watching some cool lizards, and yeah, who wouldn't? So over here, underneath the little aircon that we've got cranking at the moment, just because it's a hot day, we've got Tiddalik and her enclosure. You can see Tiddle's just hanging up the top there. This enclosure's been absolutely cranking. The plants in here have been cut back a few times now. You're getting all shy on us, Tiddles. But yeah, this enclosure is doing really, really well. It's got a drip wall in the back where the plants are kind of rooting into. You can see we've got moss just absolutely growing out the wazoo. Over on these bits of driftwood and stuff coming out here now, all sorts of plants are growing through down the bottom. And if we take a little bit of a gander down here, in this pond down here that we've got for her, it's a little bit hard when I have the reflection there, but showing you this way, you can kind of see that we've got a bunch of Java moss, and I believe it's HC that's down there as well. And yeah, there's just a stack of plants that are growing through this tank. Tiddles is doing really, really fantastic, and yeah, she's a good little frog. Definitely one of my son's favourites. He loves teasing her with his little fingers, because they probably resemble little worms of some description. So is her tank. I mean, that's grown in so much since I first set it up, and of course, you know, all the links to these builds and things I'll put down in the description, so if you want to go and check out, you know, different tanks and how I built them and stuff, I'll just list them, so you know, you guys can go and check out those videos if you want to go and see all that sort of stuff. I think that'll be a great idea to kind of just be able to kind of give you guys a little bit of inspo, because at the end of the day I've filmed it all, and if you want to see more in-depth things, then why not? You know, the options are there for you. So over in this vivarium here, we have my 10-year-old or thereabouts Stimsons python, Severus snake, very original name. One that I chose obviously 10 years ago. Now, in this vivarium, you guys would know if you've been watching this channel for a while now that this was originally the Cinctus vivarium for Nephrus cinctus. This viv hasn't changed much since the cinctus have been in there. You can probably notice since the video where I've done the reintroduction of Sevi into this tank though, I have changed the hide layout a little bit just to give him a couple more options. Another reason why I did that is I did originally kind of have this hide hidden in amongst all over those rocks over there, but some cheeky snake decided he loved wedging in between the two and flexing and making lots of noise at a night time. And my bed head's just here and Finnan is just through the wall, so he was just waking us up. So for temporarily, I've kind of just resorted to just going in between these kind of couple of hides here, these couple of options. He actually really prefers this one here. I think it's just because it's like in the middle of the heat, which is under here. He's got a heat tile essentially under here, and then yeah, it's in between the cold side and the warm side, so he kind of sits in that kind of neutral zone. You can kind of notice too at the moment he doesn't look his flushest. That's just because he's coming into shed. He's just kind of gone through that really blue stage where he looks very deep in shed, so hopefully within the next few days or so he'll be getting rid of that skin. What I will probably do in that time is I will probably get a bunch of damp sphagnum moss and just shove it in that hide for him as well, just to add a little bit more humidity into the cage. That's what I tend to do for a lot of my terrestrial snakes, should they be having a shed or in a bit more of an arid environment. It's just about trying to create those little micro habitats for the animal. But all in all, this enclosure is pretty simple, like most of my enclosures, but I do try to make it look aesthetically pleasing for both me and the animal. At the end of the day, this snake was kept in a rack or rack systems for about 10 years of his life. So to be able to put him into something that looks a lot more natural, or, you know, at least give him a habitat that, you know, he's got light, he's got heat, he's got all that sort of stuff where, you know, in a rack system, I know you can kind of add lights and things in there, but it's just never the same as having a bigger space. What I do want to do down the line is create some sort of climbing opportunity for him as well, just so he can exercise a bit more. I'm just so short on time, so, you know, all these little things that I want to do, it does take time, unfortunately, and it is something that I will get to. It's just about getting the time to do it. And yeah, after going back to both my jobs after having a broken finger and stuff like that, I've just been smashed and just don't have the time on my hands. But yeah, that's Sevi, my 10-year-old Stimsons python. Alright, so then over in this room here, we have a couple of green tree pythons. This is my pair. So we've got Midori up here and we've got Wasabi down here. Now, I know he looks like a real small snake in a big enclosure. I actually love that look. But the reason that he's in here and she's up there is a couple of years ago I managed to breed this pair and obviously get those hatchies outside, but I also did maternal incubation with this particular female in this particular tank, and she kind of hung over here on the floor where the heat from the heat panel down here was kind of rising up and keeping her belly nice and warm during the day. So I'm just trying to replicate that same sort of scenario. But if it doesn't work this year, for example, which I'm kind of, I don't know what's going on with her. She's kind of keeping me guessing at the moment. She's not on feed. She's kind of got a few signs that saying that she's gravid, albeit a little bit late in the season compared to when she last went, but I'm not 100% sure what's happening. So anyway, I'm just trying to replicate that same sort of scenario, but just for reference, that is a 1.2 meter or 4 foot box by 2 foot by 2 foot or 60 centimeters by 60 centimeters. And then this one down here is a 1.2 meter or 4 foot by 4 foot by 2 foot. So yeah, 120 by 120 by 60 centimeter enclosure. These guys are a great pair of snakes. I absolutely love these pythons. Little Wasabi down here. Every now and then he has a bit of a rough shed, but he's, it kind of comes down to his climate. What I've got to make sure to do is, because this box is pretty well ventilated, I just got to make sure that I put enough water in the bottom here. So down here I've essentially got this kind of big tray where I kind of just keep dirt, and that's where I've planted all the plants, so then it doesn't kind of like wash out and ruin the melamine box. So yeah, basically I just got to make sure that once a week or thereabouts, I kind of dump a litre or two of water into there just to kind of keep the relative humidity through this box pretty happy. This tends to be one of his favourite spots. He loves perching from here and hunting, so quite often at night time you can kind of see him coming down and hunting. Not wake him up, but just get him to come and say hello to us. Where are you, mate? Come on. Ah, there's his little head. He's decided to peek over on that side there. He's a beautiful little snake. He's definitely grown a lot since his last bred with Midori. He was quite small, which was quite daunting when he first did breed with Midori. But he's grown significantly since then. Again, I don't really like power feed my snakes or anything like that. I don't believe in it. I think it's just a way to shorten your snake's lifespan. I see a lot of people doing it, and I've been guilty in the past of doing it, and I've had snakes drop off really early from doing it. So, I just don't see the point anymore. The only time I try to power feed per se is just to get some weight back on some animals once they are, laid a clutch of eggs, for example. But yeah, this is Midori. She's a beautiful girl. I'm, as I said, guessing all the time whether or not she's actually got some eggs inside of there for us. But yeah, time will tell. Time will tell. So, I'm not going to hold my breath and count my green tree pythons before they hatch, so to speak. But yeah, she's a great snake, and I absolutely love this pair of pythons. They're definitely going to be a mainstay here for a long time to come. What I'm not 100% certain on is whether or not I'm actually going to keep my rough scale pythons who are down in this enclosure down here. So I do have, I will say, a pair loosely. I don't know if they're a pair. I haven't sexed them myself. You can see that this one up here is deep in shed at the moment. So I'm not looking as prettiest, that's for sure. But these guys are great snakes. I do absolutely love them as a species, but I think potentially I just have the potential to essentially run out of room, and that's not something that I want to necessarily have happen. I don't know where the other guy's gone. He must be hiding down here in the leaf litter somewhere. I'll have to pull him out so we can have a bit of a look. But yeah, it's just one of those things that, every now and then you end up running out of room with things. So, as those baby green tree pythons grow, and they're obviously something that really tickles my fancy, they're going to need some room to grow up into. So, these guys potentially might get ruled out in that circumstance. I wasn't wrong. He's down there on the floor, just hanging out underneath a kind of like a half log sort of hide thing that I've got down there for him. So yeah, these guys are an awesome species. I absolutely do adore them. Not a huge python, they get a little bit bigger than the green tree pythons. They kind of max out at like a good size one would be like 1.5-1.8 meters sort of thing. So get a pretty decent size. Again, I slow grow these snakes. Like, there's no reason for them to be big, fat and unhealthy things, especially in captivity where they don't have the ample opportunity to roam around all night and go and suss things out. As you can see behind me, like the enclosure that they're in is definitely substantial for the size that they are now. Long term, they'd probably need something a fair bit bigger, which has also got me kind of guessing as to what I do with them. As far as size goes, like this snake's probably about 4 foot thereabouts when he kind of stretches out like that. But what a unique python at the end of the day. Like, these guys are super, super unique, and, you know, I definitely toss up with myself, you know, whether or not to move these guys on or what to do with them, but I don't want to at the same time. It's kind of a bit of a heartbreak, but every now and then you kind of got to make some hard decisions. So I'm still weighing up what I do. These guys are actually in my son's bedroom, so, you know, it is one of those things that I have to make sure that I've got enough room for my son too, because he's obviously very, very important. And as much as I love these snakes, sometimes our human kids win. So we'll see what happens there. No doubt he'll always end up having some critter in his room, but, you know, he's already loving it. He's already getting into all the snakes and lizards and stuff like that. Loves pointing them out and playing with them and stuff where he can. So yeah, but what an awesome species, hey? Like, these guys are just so unique. They've got the biggest tooth to size ratio of any python in the world, I believe. So these guys have a really big bulbous head, and that just allows for enough room for those teeth to kind of hang in that jaw there. So these guys are usually eating these rats up in the Kimberly, where the rats can actually shed their fur. So these guys needed to develop some longer teeth to be able to kind of penetrate the fur and get into the flesh without the rats being able to shed it off. So I thought that was pretty cool. Definitely a unique attribute to the snakes. Obviously they're called the rough scale python because they've got these keeled scales, and, you know, if you compare it to any other python out there, these guys are completely different. But they're pretty common here in Australia. You know, you can kind of pick these guys up for anywhere from about $200 to $300, whereas I know overseas they're a little bit different. The other thing about roughies is they come from a very small genetic pool, so, you know, they tend to only kind of come from, I think it was 5 individuals that were breeding, but there was 10 collected, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I'd have to reread the stories again on them, but yeah, small genetic pool that these guys come from. The old rough scale python. How cool. I love just being able to watch these snakes just climb away into their habitat and stuff as well. You know, obviously having these kind of shelves and things laid out like this, that means they can kind of thermoregulate top to bottom and choose where they want to sit, where they want to feel protected. They've got those vines and things in there so they can choose to climb around on those should they want to, or, you know, just to be able to really exercise those muscles. So that's one thing that I've noticed with these guys, is I think they look better when they're kind of mean and lean and, you know, able to climb with ease like this. It's a lot different to a big fat old carpet python. Okay, so the last 2 animals that I've actually got for this tour are a pair of children's pythons that are in these racks here. Not really going to show you the tubs. They're pretty simple. Couple of hides, water bowls, you know, bit of mulch and leaf litter and stuff in there. But what I'll do is I'll get the snakes out so we can actually have a look at them. So yeah, here we've got a pair of children's pythons. These guys are awesome snakes. These particular individuals, they're kind of getting on in a few years. You can see this kind of chunkier one that's in this hand here. This is my female, and the smaller male here, he's a little bit darker in colour at the moment. He's probably due to come up to shed, to be honest, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's kind of starting off that process. Awesome animals. Like, as far as pythons go, these guys are one of the best species you can own, in my opinion. I find them very, very amenable. They're awesome little captives. I just don't like keeping them in racks anymore. You know, it's like getting my Stimsons python out into an enclosure. It's just completely been a game changer for me, just to be able to see them more often. I get a bit bored of animals if you can't see them, to be quite frank, and, you know, I think that's kind of the purpose of naturalistic enclosures and vivariums, is to be able to actually enjoy the animals for what they are, rather than just kind of collect them like stamps. So that's where I'm kind of going these days. So again, kind of space and things, I'm not 100% certain what I'm going to do with these guys. I do love them, but, you know, I just need more space. I really do, to be able to enjoy all the species that I want to do properly. And yeah, so again, not sure what I'm going to do, but as far as snakes themselves go, they are awesome little snakes. These guys kind of top out at, like, a big one would be like a metre, honestly. You know, if it's been overfed, or, you know, a particular big genetic animal, you might get 1.2 out of them, but, you know, these guys are pretty small. They're probably pushing like 80-90 centimetres. They're not huge animals, but yeah, they're gorgeous little snakes. Just a pair of worms, really. But, you know, as far as like little pythons and things go, like, I don't think you can go wrong with a small snake like these guys. These guys aren't like crazy looking individuals. These guys are pretty regularly like patterned and stuff as to what you'd see up in the NT, where, you know, if you check out some of my herping videos and stuff, you can see these guys in a fair few of those videos. But yeah, they're great little snakes. I really do enjoy them, but yeah, just not sure what the future's got in store for me. So anyway, we'll leave it there. Well guys, I really hope you enjoyed this tour video. I know it's not quite as in-depth as the last one that I've done, so if you did want a bit more of an in-depth video, make sure you go and check out that one as well. Again, it'll all be linked down below. But guys, I really hope that you did enjoy it. If you did, make sure to drop the video a like and a comment. Share it around if you want to as well. I'd definitely appreciate that. And also, if you did want to support the channel even further, you can go and get yourself some merch from the Teespring store, things like from Bush to Box shirts, as well as obviously a lot of Beach to Scaly Beast merch. And if you did want to go that next step further, you can go over to Patreon as well and support me over there. Alrighty guys, until the next video, take it easy, and I'll catch you then.